Thanks so much for having us. Well, this is a very exciting conversation for me. I've been covering the energy storage space for over a decade now, and so I actually got to talk with Mateo like way back in the beginning when Form was kind of just getting started, just an idea, and then they've come so far since then and raised a ton of money, built a factory, getting products out into the field. So we're going to catch up on, what the state of play is and what the next exciting milestones are going to be. Mateo, let's start with what you've achieved so far on the path to commercializing this super long duration storage. You've been working on a domestic manufacturing base and kind of gearing up for large scale production. Tell us like where are you at with that? What kind of metrics have you hit so far on the production side?
Yeah, well, first, it's great to be here. Always great to catch up, Jillian. It's been 8 years now since we founded the company. When we first said we were going to build a 100-hour duration battery, people were largely dismissive, I think, of the need for that kind of thing. We bet on the megatrends that were behind us, load growth, broadly speaking, and the need for reliable, low cost, and increasingly decarbonized electricity. So that's really what we were betting on, and it turns out we were right on those axes, and the market has arrived much faster than I think we anticipated, and we had maybe something to do with that.
And that's a really good point of it. Back then, it wasn't just could you make a technology that would do this. There was also all these questions of like, would anyone even pay for it? Right?
That's right.
You had to kind of convince people that there needed to be this kind of product, and then that you could actually invent it.
Yeah, that's right. And, the duration of storage has increased as the costs have come down. And so the world back then was focused on 4-hour batteries, not 2-hour batteries. And a lot of incremental thinking there. And we were trying to take things all the way to the end game and say, well, in the end state, what are you going to need? What kinds of resources will you need that functionally create high value in the system? And it's not, as according to our calculations, not 10 hours or 20 hours. It really does start at 100 hours. Mm-hmm. And that really does correlate to weather-driven events that drive a lot of reliability and therefore cost in the system. And so that's really the pattern that you have to be able to match from a duration. And if you know the duration, you know the cost. That's the benefit of storage. And so targeting that $20 a kilowatt hour, that was always the bogey from the beginning. And we now have a very clear pathway to get there. In the intervening 8 years, though, since we started the company, it's been a lot, as you pointed out. We had to first demonstrate that we could control the chemistry, that we understood the electrochemistry, that we could then subsequently build a device that embodies that electrochemistry, that it's engineered, that it can be manufactured at high volume and low cost and high quality, and then go do that. And so we've been, as I frequently say these days, we've been becoming a manufacturing company for the last couple of years. We broke ground on our factory here in West Virginia, in Weirton, West Virginia, in the Northern Panhandle, about 45 minutes from Pittsburgh, in May of 2023. We had a finished building less than a year later, and we were landing production equipment about a year after that. So in 2024, we're landing first production equipment, and here we are a year after that, and we have delivered the first batteries to the customer. We're ramping up from here. We're deep in development of the second generation already. So we've covered a lot of ground there. We can dig into some of the details there, but short version of things is we've produced 100 kilometers of electrode length through the factory. So 100,000 combined electrodes of anodes and cathodes. And that doesn't sound like a lot in terms of batteries, but keep in mind our electrodes are a meter long and about 30 centimeters wide. So the aerial amount is quite large compared to, let's say, lithium ion.
Yeah, that's true. They don't look like normal batteries, right? It's kind of this big flat thing that you line up, a bunch in a module. And I guess maybe backing up a little bit, did you have to go the route of doing your own factory? Like what could you have just outsourced that to get started quicker, or why did you kind of go big on that choice?
Yeah, we did decide early on that we were going to be fully vertically integrated. So from the chemistry all the way through manufacturing, and starting with powders to produce those electrodes, and then all the way through the packs. And that's because you can't really say you understand electrochemistry until you are manufacturing it at scale, at rate, with yields, with quality targets. The electrochemistry and the manufacturing are two halves of a whole, which are indivisible. And you can't say you're through the understanding of that, the electrochemistry, until you are doing it. And that's not something you can hand to somebody else. We have a very tightly integrated team. Our material scientists are working with our manufacturing folks. And to gain the process control that's required to hit the run rates at the scale, at the yields, requires that type of integration. So, just to give you a snapshot, taking those powders in and then producing a high quality yield anode out requires over 100 unique steps that have to be very precisely defined. Control parameters have to be hit. And you've got to break down that process very, 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 very precisely with a deep understanding of the science, of the material science, the electrochemistry, the process chemistry, and then of course the just the process machinery that's involved, right? The equipment sets that feed into all of that. So again, it's just a really tightly integrated part of the fundamentals of the battery, and so we knew we were going to have to take that on. Manufacturing cells, doing cell assembly, doing module assembly, doing systems assembly, that's much more straightforward. In theory, you could outsource that kind of thing. Given the volumes that we're at right now and just the speed of iteration, it didn't make sense to do that. Down the line, we will definitely consider sort of how we scale from where we are today, how we scale manufacturing volumes faster globally, and that may be on the table.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're cranking out products at this factory. It's also it's a very beautiful factory as far as factories go. I got to a lot of natural light. I like what you did with the keeping it big and open there in Weirton. You said you've now shipped to your first big customer site. So tell us about how that's going. I mean, this is you've got this contract maybe 5 years ago now with the utility Great River Energy, and I think originally the time frame was it was going to be up and running in like 2023 or something. So it's taken a little bit longer in practice, but where are you at with that? When are we going to see, electrons flowing, and kind of what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, that customer, Great River Energy, which is a generation transmission cooperative in the state of Minnesota, they serve about 1 million customers through 22 member cooperatives. They signed a contract with us back in 2020 when we were 40 people with iron marbles in a cup. It's sort of amazing that they saw the vision that we saw, because usually that doesn't happen. But they've been an incredible partner over those 5 years, and we've been very transparent with them about the challenges that we were about to face back in 2020 that we saw, and then candidly our progress along the way. We are definitely a little bit later than we wanted to be originally. On the other hand, we are now on the other side of that. And as I mentioned, we did ship the first packs out. They're on site. They are getting installed right now. So electrons will be flowing a few weeks. It takes a few weeks to sort of commission, packs that are on site. They need to be filled with electrolyte. They need to be connected electrically. Of course, we do all of our, pre-commissioning and our checking out of the system, that kind of stuff. It's also installed on the site of a natural gas plant. So we're sort of co-located there. The GRE, as it happens, is also doing a lot of work to that particular generation facility right now. And it's sort of, this is how things work in the power sector. You got to be able to work in complex, dynamic industrial environments. And so that's what we're doing. And they're doing sort of a major servicing for that to make sure it's, in tip-top shape for the winter.
Yeah, but that sounds like a pretty quick turnaround, actually, like from the units landing on the ground there to getting it commissioned. But it's
those
weeks or months or
batteries are fairly easy to deploy. That's one of the attractiveness of the category overall, whether it's lithium ion or really anything. And we designed it to be to be able to be brought up quickly in the field, right? So these are fully containerized systems, of course. You do the EPC work ahead of time, you do the civil work, the electrical work, and you just sort of land these enclosures, the shipping containers on a prepared pad, right? So a lot of the work has already happened over the last few months, and now we just sort of land the final product and do the connections and do our fit checks and that kind of stuff.
And you mentioned like filling up the electrolyte. So is that like you can ship it dry and then
That's right.
just add water kind of thing on site?
Yep. It's a little more than water, but yes, it is water based. And we use a company that blends these kinds of things, a very large company. So they just show up with trucks and, tanker trucks and fill it up. It is much cheaper to ship it dry. Not to mention it's much less complex to ship things that are not sloshing around. And so we certainly prefer to do that.
I think that's moving along. Can you give us a quick sense of like what comes next? You've got a few other imminent utility contracts that you're working on too, but like what, where will we be a year from now, kind of thing?
Yeah, we and in terms of contracts, we've got a backlog that takes us into 2028 in terms of signed contracts. So we know our production ramp up volumes. We know the customers, right? Obviously, where those batteries are going.
So meaning like you're fully booked, like the factory is fully booked out for what you can build until.
That's right.
Wow. And that's before you've like turned on the first large scale commercial one.
Yep. And that's really an indication of the fact that we have created a product that does meet a very acute need for our customers. It creates a lot of value when they have the asset. And so they're willing to, they were willing to just sort of be the first ones to sign up for that. Excel is a fantastic partner. We've got 2 sites with them. Georgia Power is another fantastic partner. Dominion. So, these folks, they want the asset, and they were willing to sort of be those, serials 1 through 9, if you will, and then all the new contracts that we're signing are serials 10 and beyond. And that's the old joke in the utility industry being that everybody wants to be the 5th person to be the 2nd person in line to buy something, and nobody wants to go first, right? So how do you break that? And we sort of were able to cut that knot just by showing value. And by making sure that the projects were the right size, right? Not too big, but also not too small, and sort of, able to be approved by the regulator, that they can show unequivocal value in their system for bringing these kinds of assets online. And so that's the real challenge for us is scaling up as quickly as we can, as sensibly as we can, coming down the cost curve as we do that. But we have all the megawatts under contract that allow us to come down that cost curve and then to generate profits for the company. So we're very bullish about where we are. It's a real focus on execution here. So timelines and cost down and ramp up and that kind of thing. Fortunately, however, we've already hit in the factory. We've already hit the run rates that are what we need to start production for the next version of things. So we've already demonstrated the capability of the machines and the operations and the personnel, and so we have very little doubt that we're going to be able to sort of make that transposition Gen 1 to Gen 2. There's no, order of magnitude more parts made in a day going to the next version of things. In fact, we already exceeded, in fact, the run rates that we would start production with. So and that comes from producing those hundreds of, 1,000 plus electrodes. So we feel very confident about that. And we got to do more. So that's sort of where we're at as a company.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, usually with the novel hardware, like there's some iteration between the first installed thing and they take notes and tweak things and stuff. But are you anticipating doing that after the first one, or is it that you've got enough runtime on your own, demonstrations internally that you feel like it's pretty fully baked?
Yeah. So I mentioned sort of at the electrode level, tens of thousands of each of the electrodes. We've also deployed 4 distinct iterations of the complete system as well. So, so all the cells integrated into modules and then enclosures, and that deployed to the grid and charging, discharging. And we've done 3 of those versions in the last year alone. So we've iterated, very, very quickly. You can only learn by doing it at that stage. You sort of can only find the things you don't know by putting it in the field and charging and discharging. And we have a site in California that we deploy to that is nearby to our Bay Area office, connected to the grid there in Oakland. And then we have an ability to do that here at the factory as well. So we have a complete system deployed here at the factory, which is helpful.
Great. And that'll be like identical,
Yep.
Functionally to what you're putting in.
That's right.
in
That's right.
Minnesota.
So
Okay.
we have a twin here at the factory that lets us, make sure that things are going well out there. If we do need to troubleshoot, we can do that locally before we, issue a fix, or fix it. Frankly, here first. So yeah, we've done a lot of that kind of iteration as well. There will continue to be iterations. So we're not done, of course. We already see so many ways to improve the product, and we're already implementing a lot of that. Now we're putting it on the timeline to make sure we intercept that as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, well, I wanted to talk about the kind of macro environment a bit, because certainly on the policy side, there's been a lot of upheavals this year. Just most recently, the Trump administration, Department of Energy, has been canceling, grants to grid projects, sort of calling it a Green New Scam, but it was actually from the bipartisan infrastructure law, which, if I recall correctly, was passed in a bipartisan manner. But that actually is hitting some grants to your Excel, the projects that Excel wants to build with you. And I was curious, like, how big a deal is that? And then what else in the energy policy, arena do you think is like the most significant ups or downs for you this year?
Yeah, we have two grants from the Department of Energy. One which is for manufacturing capex here in the factory. So this is part of the manufacturing and energy supply chain program. That's for $150 million. We're already invoicing on that, being reimbursed. So there's okay. no challenge with that one. We have another project that's worth about another $150 million. That's for a project that's part of the Grid Reliability and Innovation Program. That's for a large battery, 85 megawatts, 8.5 gigawatt hours in the state of Maine, in a very constrained node on the ISO New England system. That also is untouched by these actions here, and we have great support from the DOE. Excel is the prime on that project that you mentioned, and we're a sub to them. So I'm not going to talk about that. That's their project. They are directly engaged on that one. But we feel great about the support that we get from the administration. They value storage, geothermal, and nuclear were sort of the technologies that were preferenced in the OBBBA, and so they're reiterated the policy support for manufacturing as well as for deployment on the ITC. We feel pretty good about that, and we're just going and doing the projects. And
that's really significant. Like, the law of the land now is in fact tax credits for storage deployment for
that's right.
a decade to come, and support on the manufacturing side.
We do 85% domestic content today. We're above the highest threshold for FEOC, the foreign entity of concern requirements today. We already meet the most stringent requirement they've got. That narrative really resonates, right? This is a technology that was frankly invented in America. We're commercializing it here in America. We're going to manufacture it here in America. And we're doing it on an old steel mill here in Weirton. So there's a lot of, I think, elements to the Form Energy story that really do resonate with people when they sort of put it together and they say, hey, that's exactly the kind of thing we should be supporting in the country, and we should keep going because it seems to be making a difference. So let's do it.
Well, and then the other big kind of macro theme this year is obviously AI demand and this looming, colossus of new consumption for electricity that everyone's trying to figure out, how to supply and how quickly. There's a lot of solutions that can't really be built in the next 5 years. Like, try to get a new gas turbine ordered right now. That'll take you a while. Small modular reactors that don't exist are harder to get power from. But tell us about how the Form product could actually, come into play to meet hyperscaler demand. Because both in terms of like your commercial availability and manufacturing availability, but also like the format and the function that it provides.
Yeah, this is why we are pushing so hard to scale up as quickly as we can. I mean, the demand is in the, if we could produce it today, it would be in the tens of thousands of megawatts, right? Gigawatt, tens of gigawatts demand. And we can land new production capacity in approximately 18 months. We built a factory and landed the equipment in that time period for the first time. So we feel confident about doing that again, but we need to do that at least one iteration. As I mentioned, we are booked for the next couple of years already. So we are looking at projects starting in 2028. That's sort of the earliest we could deliver something new to a new customer. with potentially new production capacity that we bring online at that same time.
So you're talking about like actually new factories already.
Yeah,
like,
or expanding beyond the originally contemplated 500 megawatts per year that this factory can do, which is 50 gigawatt hours. That's a lot of energy. But the main application there is speed to power. In other words, how do you enable large loads to be interconnected to the grid faster than otherwise they might be able to from the utility perspective? And so if you want a gigawatt, which is the city of Austin demand overnight, most utilities would say, well, I'll get that to you in 2030 or 2031, maybe at the earliest. I need to do my load flow studies, and maybe I need to reconductor transmission or upgrade a substation or whatever else it might be. And really what they're concerned with is 100 hours. And Tyler Norris came out with a good report on this, out of Duke, and that really is it. It comes down to reliability concerns. And if a data center effectively shows up and says, I can make my gigawatt disappear for 4 days, would that be helpful? The answer is yes, that's very helpful to the utility. And so they say now they can sort of take a different approach to figure out if they can meet the load for the vast majority of hours where it doesn't matter, right? They have plenty of energy. Where we are short is peak capacity. That's really what it comes down to. And so our battery in many ways is a peak capacity asset. That's its value to the system. And that's what we are enabling in this crunch for data power is bringing online very large loads faster than they otherwise would be able to
And that's also fundamentally different from what a lithium ion battery offering could do. They could help the peak on 1 day, but not 4 days straight. Because I've been trying to get my head around these new sort of business models, and everyone's trying to sell their thing and say it's a data center solution, but like a technology that can actually do the 100 hours in one go seems like to be in a kind of different category of usefulness there. And I mean, just briefly, like, what would this look like? Like, are you thinking behind the meter at the data center site, or you would be building it somewhere in the regional grid so that they can balance the data center's draw, or how's that work?
Those deals where you're sort of enabling speed to power through the utility, those are still front of the meter applications. So not necessarily on site with the data center, but on the same node, almost certainly, and interconnected at the high voltage point. So that's generally how this is. As far as the actual structure, it's a tariff that the data center customer would sign up for. Call it a capacity tariff or maybe a reliability tariff that then enables the utility to turn around, procure the assets, and put them in the rate base and serve their customers in that way. We are talking to some folks about behind the meter applications, very large microgrids, if you will. And in that case, it's a combination of resources, as you would expect. If you want your German generation, there's going to be some thermal generation, right? Turbines if they have them, maybe reciprocal engines if they don't have turbines, solar, short duration storage like lithium ion, and then us. And that gets you sort of the least cost portfolio of behind the meter resources to meet that reliability level that they're looking for. So we are doing those as well. And, there's some big, very big ones that are out there.
And I guess in that first scenario where it's on the grid and through a tariff, then an asset that's useful for the rest of the grid too, right? It's not just the data center. It's actually decarbonizing the whole grid the rest of the time, and then specifically helping the data center on those peak stretches in the year. Yeah,
I think about it as enabling the utility to access value of underutilized resources, right? So one way to think about, of course, wind or solar is that they are intermittent. Yes, that's true. Another way of thinking about them is that they are underutilized, right? They're not as productive members of the portfolio as they could be. And, having multi-day duration storage enables that. And enables the rest of the grid to operate more efficiently as well. This is sort of underappreciated too. The thermal resources are not optimally deployed. They're being forced to sort of step in and have excursions up and down. And part of that we can solve through this multi-day duration resource.
Yeah. Okay. Well, last question, lightning round. Clearly you've gone through all these checkpoints that could have sunk the company, from back when you were just started. There were all these potential, failure modes that you've now moved past. What are the remaining risks you have to deal with to go forward and execute this vision?
Well, really, they are execution focused. So We're a company with one product. We have one manufacturing line. We have a base of suppliers. Things go wrong. It is the real world, and it's stochastic and not always in your favor. And so we need to be really good with our systems, our quality systems, our supply chain systems, our manufacturing systems. And we need to detect, to mitigate, and to move on. And so that's sort of the name of the game for us right now, is scaling up from here.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have. But Mateo, always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian.